Hey guys, it's Lady Raven, the Wild Witch, and I'm recording this ahead of time because I am going to be out of town this coming Monday, but I still wanted to make sure you guys got a lesson of some kind, so I wanted to go ahead and record this ahead of time. And I'm going to record also the live sale, except it's going to be live on video, not really live, so I apologize for that. I just have to pick up a family member in Atlanta, so that's why I'm going to be out of town. But anyway, so for today, and today I have notes because there's a lot of information I want to cover, and I want to make sure that I don't forget anything. So today we're going to be talking about chamomile and understanding how to use this herb, not just in our practice, our spiritual practice, but also in our everyday life. And it actually has a surprising amount of uses if you're a gardener. So I didn't actually realize this until I did some research on this herb. And now that I know, I am planning on totally taking advantage of that because I have container gardens at home. So first thing that we want to talk about, there's two kinds of chamomile out there. Sometimes you'll hear people refer to something as true chamomile. And so when they're talking about true chamomile, they're talking about Roman chamomile. And then there's the German chamomiles, the second. Those are the two primary varieties. They basically do the same thing. They have the same properties. They medicinally, they do the same thing as well. Primary differences between them is that Roman chamomile is a perennial, which means it keeps going, and German chamomile is an annual. However, if you live in a very cold climate and you plant Roman chamomile, a lot of times it will act like an annual because it'll die and come back every year. So those are the two different types of chamomile. The Roman chamomile is also known as Russian chamomile and English chamomile. So when you hear those words, that's what you're talking about. So you're talking about perennials versus annuals. That's really the primary difference. All the properties are exactly the same. All the medicinal properties are exactly the same. It's just a matter of the type of life cycle that it has. So one thing that I hear people say all the time, that chamomile is really difficult to plant and to keep. And so this year I decided to plant chamomile. So I have chamomile growing at home. And when I originally did the research on this, it said, every place I went to, it said, you can put it in partial shade. It doesn't do really well. I mean, it likes sun and it can do partial shade, but it doesn't really like blistering sun in its face all the time. And we had a particularly hot summer. So when I got mine, it was in the very beginning of summer. So I decided to not put it in direct sun. So I put it somewhere where I got maybe 6 hours of sunlight a day. And boy, oh boy, it did not like that. So I finally ended up moving it to where it gets direct sun all day. Basically from sun up to sundown, there's sun going on. And it's really thriving now because of that. So when you see articles that's going to say full sun but also grows well in partial sun, really doesn't do very well in partial sun. I mean, if you want to limit it and keep it real small and scraggly looking, then yes, partial sun will be great. But if you want it to really thrive and do well, it needs the full sun. And I have not had any issues with it being burned in the sun or anything like that. So that's the first thing. Another article that I read says that it grows best when it's not fussed over, and I thought that was a cute use of words. But essentially what it is you don't want to fertilize it a lot. You just want to basically plant it where it is, and it's very, very drought resistant. And so you do not want to overwater it because it'll start rotting the roots. So you need to make sure that it's very, very dry before you water it again. And from personal experience, an issue that I had with it over the last couple of weeks with all the rain that we got is my chamomile pot would overfill with water, and I had to go out there and drain the water from that pot pretty much every day to make sure that it stayed okay, that it wasn't going to die because of that. But you want to make sure that you let it stay in the sun and let it be kind of very dry before you add more water to it. So that's an important component of it. A lot of times it is planted as a companion plant because one of the things that chamomile does is it keeps bugs away. Now, it doesn't mean that it's completely resistant to bugs. If the chamomile is not doing well, it may at that point be susceptible to bugs and things like that. But if it's doing really well and thriving, it pretty much keeps all the bugs away. And so people tend to plant it as a companion plant in gardens and things like that as kind of a natural way to keep bugs out of their crops. So that's going to come in handy when we talk about the magical properties of chamomile. So lock that one away and think about that, because it's going to come back. So that's basically the basics of the chamomile plant. It kind of grows all over the place. It's not very organized plant. It kind of, just has shoots everywhere. But so far it has been pretty easy to grow. So if you want to harvest it, you're going to wait till the flowers are very fragrant. You're going to clip them at the end of the stem, and that's basically how you're going to harvest it. Remember, when you're doing responsible harvesting, you don't want to take more than 25% of the blooms in the plant. So just kind of give the plant a chance to, continue to do well. So make sure that you probably, if you just planted it now and you have a little plant, like mine is about that big, I'm not harvesting it yet. It's probably going to be until it gets bigger is when I'm going to start harvesting it. So for right now, it's just kind of growing and doing its thing. So one of the things that I found interesting, remember I talked about teas, uses in the gardening. It's chamomile tea, which is really cool, actually, in my opinion. So chamomile tea, and we all drink it, we all know that it's good. And by the way, chamomile is kind of in the same family as ragweed. So if you have a ragweed allergy, don't drink chamomile tea, and kind of stay away from chamomile if you can, because sometimes there can be an interaction. Not all the time, but sometimes there can be an interaction, and people can have allergy symptoms if they are allergic to ragweed. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head too. Just because something's natural doesn't mean that it can't give you an allergic reaction or it can't interact with anything else. So keep that in mind. But anyway, back to the chamomile tea. So chamomile tea, chamomile is an antifungal, which means it keeps fungus away, and it can also be used as an insecticide for plants. I did not know this. So basically, if you're gonna, one of the big problems you have when you're growing new plants from seedlings is that the seedlings in the beginning, before they're ready to go outside, is they can get a fungus on them, and then that can kill them. So what you can do with chamomile is you can brew a very mild, like a light pale yellow infusion of chamomile tea, put it in a bottle, and spray it on the seedlings, and that will keep fungus away. You don't want to overspray. I mean, don't go to town on it. Just spray a little bit, and that's supposed to keep fungus away. So I am totally going to try that in March when I start planting again. The other things that you can do is, if you want your seedlings to kind of grow better and ensure that it's going to germinate, you can take your seeds and you can soak them in a, once again, very mild chamomile infusion, light pale yellow. And you can soak the seeds for 8 to 12 hours in that. Don't let it sit for more than 24 hours, because then they're going to rot. So 8 to 12 hours, and then once you lift the seeds from there, what that's going to do, first of all, it's going to protect the seeds with its protect it from the fungus. But second, it's going to soften the outer shell of the seed so that it allows it to germinate a little bit better. So that's going to be the two primary things that it's going to do for you. The other third thing that I found out, and this year I have been battling Japanese beetles like no tomorrow. I may end up trying this next year on my roses, because this year I went and got some heavy duty insecticide, and I mean, it did the job. Obviously it worked great, but I'm not a big fan of that. So next year I'm going to be more proactive with it, and I'm going to use this method, which basically is, you can brew a very strong infusion of chamomile. Now you want to put 3 times the amount of chamomile you would normally put to brew a regular infusion. So like if you're going to brew, I would say normally you want to use 1 to 1.5 teaspoons per 8-ounce cup. So you would triple that. So you would use 3 to 4.5 teaspoons for an 8-ounce cup of chamomile matter to brew it. So you want to brew that. You want to let it steep for 24 hours. You want that dark, very, very dark infusion that's going to come out. You're going to take that and you're going to chill it, and then you can put that in a spray bottle and you can spray that on your plants, and it's supposed to act like an insecticide and keep the insects away. So I think I would do this more as a preventative. I don't know that it's going to really kill a lot of insects. I mean, it could, I don't know. I'm just going by what I read, but I would totally do it as a preventative ahead of time to protect the plants from insects. That in the back of your mind, because we're going to talk about this in the magical side. So that's something that you can do. And then make sure that you don't spray it during the day, so you always want to spray it at night. And that's because during the day with the hot sun beating on it, it can really change the effectiveness, and it can really change the nature of the relationship the chamomile is going to have with that flower. Sorry, lots of noise outside my office. The nature that chamomile is going to have with that, and it can really make it more difficult for you to, it can like make the stems like sticky and gooey, and you don't want that for your plant. So everything that I read says you want to spray it at night and let it sit overnight so the plant has a chance to absorb that, and then the next day, you know, you should be fine. Also, they say don't spray it if you have bees on it, because, you know, it's not going to be harmful to bees. It should not be harmful to bees or to birds or to anything like that, which is another huge bonus. But you don't want to spray it on the bees. So you want to spray it on the plant. So if the bees are in the plant, wait till they're gone and then spray it on the plant. So a couple different ways that you can do that. But I am totally going to try that. I did not know that that was a thing that you could do. So keep that in the back of your mind. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about on the medicinal side, and I'm going to give this big, huge disclaimer. I normally don't give medicinal information. So what I'm giving you right now is anecdotal information, which means it's not tried and true. I mean, there is some scientific evidence. I am not telling you to go take this for yourself. I'm not telling you to take this to heart. If you're going to take any herb, including chamomile, in a medicinal way, you need to talk to your doctor, because you have medications that you're on that it may interact with. There may be allergies that you have that it may interact with. There's a lot of reasons why you may not be able to use that plant medicinally. Once again, keep in mind, just because it's a plant, it doesn't mean that it's safe. Cyanide is all natural and it will kill you. So keep that in mind. So getting back to chamomile tea, normally what people take it for is, obviously everybody knows you can take it before you go to sleep, to calm down, to sleep better, things like that. You can also take it before you meditate to kind of relax your body and put you in that state. But other things that it does is it can help reduce menstrual cramps, because it kind of relaxes the body. And so if you have really bad menstrual cramps, you may want to try taking that. It also helps for those who have diabetes. It helps to manage the blood sugar. Now, every place that I read that in had a huge giant caveat on the bottom that says it is meant to be used in conjunction with other medications, not to go off the medications and drink the chamomile tea. And they all said, before you get on it, go talk to your doctor to make sure that there is no interaction between chamomile tea and your medications. But if you are diabetic, I think it's definitely something that you could bring up with your doctor to say, hey, chamomile tea may be able to help me lower my blood sugar. Can I take it? Is it safe for me to take that? And then have that conversation with them, because it's natural, and as long as it doesn't interfere with anything that you're taking right now, it would be a really good way to maybe lower the blood sugar. But once again, talk to your doctor first before you take it. And then finally, the other thing that it does is it helps to reduce inflammation. And it helps to reduce fever. In ancient times, it was given to children when they were having a fever or having a cold or anything like that. I'm going to tell you one story that I have about chamomile tea, chamomile infusion. And this is kind of like, it helps with the skin irritation that I was talking about, and also with the pests, right? So I think it was about 12 years ago, I had a dog that had ear mites, like really, really bad, and we couldn't get rid of it. So I took her to the vet, and they said, it's caused an ear infection, all of that. So they gave me these drops to add to her ears. And I put the drops in. The next day when we woke up, her ears were swollen so much that her ear flaps were like inside out. And I called the doctor back and said, oh my God. And he's like, come in here and we'll give you a different medication. I said, no, I'm not doing that. So I have a holistic medicine herbal book for dogs and cats at home. So I went into my book and I looked, and it said, try chamomile tea. Make an infusion of chamomile tea and put it in her ears. So I went ahead and I did that. Within 2 days, the inflammation, the allergic reaction went down. Her ears were back to normal. And at that point, I continued using the chamomile tea in her ears to get rid of the infection and to get rid of the ear mites. And 2 weeks later, when I went back in for my follow-up appointment, they were gone. Her infection was gone and her ear mites were gone. So since then, it has been something that I kind of keep on hand with my dogs when I notice that somebody's having a problem in their ears. Chamomile tea is my go-to. I make some chamomile tea. You want to make it not a mild infusion and not a super strong infusion like a golden yellow, but a little bit darker yellow. And it'll last for up to a week in the fridge. So make sure you keep it in the fridge, and after a week it's no good, you throw it away. And then I just put a few drops, like 2-3 drops in each ear every day, and rub it in there to make sure it gets in. She hated it. It was, awful, but I felt much better about having that in her ears than having the medication that caused her a huge allergic reaction in her ears. So once again, if you want to do that, and I suggest that you check with herbal medicine for animals. If you don't have a book right now, you feel free to message me in the wild community, and I will gladly share with you the one that I have at home that I've used many, many times, and it's fantastic. So that is all of the normal everyday sides of chamomile. This is the medicinal side, the physical side of the plant, and the ways that you can use it in your everyday life to help you. Now let's talk about the magical uses, because a lot of this is going to really translate very well into the magic of the plant. So first of all, let's talk about alternative names that you may see. You may see chamomile out there, and I know some people say, well, that's just how British people say it, but actually it's actually an alternate name for chamomile that probably came from England, but it is an official alternate name for chamomile, so keep that in mind. Another name you may see it under is ground apple, is another name. And if you want to know any other names that you may be able to see it under, I suggest looking in your Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. It's a fantastic book, and he generally has all the alternate names. So if you're looking at spells and grimoires that are old, or not necessarily ancient, but older, you can go in there and it'll say, add, this kind of herb, and you're like, what the hell is that herb? You can go into that encyclopedia and you can look up that name that they're giving you, and he'll give you the translation of what that herb is. Because a lot of herbs that we use in magic today were known by different local dialects in different places. So if you get a book of traditional spells from, let's say, the Cornwall region in England, different herbs may go by different names. So it's a very helpful book to have to be able to look up those names. So, names. The second thing I want to talk about is the correspondences. So correspondences for chamomile is interesting, and chamomile has always been so interesting to me because it's got sun and water correspondences, and normally the sun goes with fire, and moon water, Venus water are very common. Sun, water are extremely uncommon correspondences. So it makes chamomile very, very unique. And when you're trying to create different blends, chamomile is kind of my go-to when I need to find some balance on some blends where I need that sun energy, I need that water energy, but I don't want to add two herbs in. So a lot of times I'll add chamomile in instead of adding two separate, like a sun herb and then a water herb, because normally they don't match in correspondences. So anyway, going back to that, so keep in mind. And so why is it a sun herb? So if you want to know what your correspondences are, you need to go back into the doctrine of signatures. And if you're going to take, I'm going to teach a class that's going to start in October, and we're going to cover that pretty much in depth in that class. But this is how a lot of ancient names for plants came into play. And it was, the names came in from them just observing the plant, what the plant looked like, what the physical characteristics of the plant were, and then they assumed what the plant was related to. So sun plants are generally long, strong stems, and they grow upwards, and the flowers are generally going to be white, yellow, or orange. So this is why it's a sun herb. The second thing is it's a water plant, and water plants generally have large leaves, and they grow without discipline or abundance, and with abundance. So which means that they're kind of just everywhere. And if you ever grew chamomile, you pretty much saw that there's no rhyme or reason. They're not like organized plants like heliotrope or other plants that are very organized. So that's where those two correspondences come from. So interesting thing is that chamomile has been documented since ancient Egypt, but it actually really didn't come into full favor in terms of being well used, other than in Egyptian practice, in medicinal circles, until the British English countryside gardens became so popular because they would plant that in their gardens because it would add to the fragrance, and a lot of times they would even plant it on the ground so that as they walked on it, it would release that scent of chamomile, and people really liked that. So it's the heyday of the English country gardens, basically, is when chamomile really came into its own and became very popular. But in Egypt, it was generally related to all the sun gods in Egypt, both male and female. And it was used in mummification rites, believe it or not. And I think for the protection component of it. Remember, it keeps bugs away, it keeps things away that you don't want to have come to you. So that was one of the things that they would do. The other thing that they would do is they would have, if they had a plant that looked like it was wilting and not doing very well and about to die, they would plant chamomile next to it. And that would cause that plant to kind of come back. And probably because the chamomile was helping battle whatever it is that plant was under attack from, either fungus or insects or what have you. So this is where the correlation of that comes into play. So we're seeing chamomile being used for protection in a lot of different ways based on what chamomile actually does every day. I mean, because a lot of your magical uses for it are going to follow what the plant actually does. So chamomile protects other plants. It is an insecticide. It is an antifungal. It keeps all those pests away that can interfere with the plants being able to grow and being able to thrive. So chamomile brings that in. So this is one of the reasons why chamomile is used as a protection herb, very strong protection herb. So that's number one. Number two, it was also an herb of purification for the exact same reason. If there's something there that doesn't belong, that needs to be purified, then chamomile is going to get rid of it. So it's going to say, hey, you don't belong here, you need to go away. So protection and purification are two of the very much primary magical correspondences and components of catnip, of chamomile. I don't know where catnip came from. So the other two components that people normally use it in magic for is for sleep, and for lucid dreaming, for protecting your dreams. Remember, sleep and protection, because the chamomile will calm, so obviously it'll bring sleep. And also for meditation, because once again, it'll calm. So when the body and the mind is calm, it allows us a better connection with our higher self. So a lot of times chamomile is used for astral travel. It's used for lucid dreaming. It's used to protect you from having nightmares. All of those uses are in line with what chamomile does, both in a physical realm and also in an herbal spiritual realm of what chamomile can do. So that's very important. And the other thing that it can do is it can designate space. So a lot of times if you're trying to create, let's say you're going to have a ceremony outside, and you cleanse your space, and now you're getting ready you want to basically designate your space as your own and actually have a barrier around your space. You can use chamomile as that barrier around your space to protect that sacred space while you do your ceremony in there. A lot of people will use chamomile. They'll sprinkle it around the house to protect the home. You can sprinkle it in your front door, back door, under your windows, anywhere that somebody can get into your house. You can sprinkle that outside of that in that particular place, and that will keep people from coming in. If you have a window box, not people, but bad energy from coming in. If you have a window box, you can plant chamomile there. You can plant chamomile everywhere if you want to have that same method of protection. So it can be the live plant, or it can also be the dried plant that you're going to use, because once again, you're working with the energy, excuse me, and the essence of what chamomile actually does and what chamomile is. So that's really, really important. And once again, the other thing that you can use it for is for divination. So if you are getting ready to scry, for example, I know a lot of people will drink like a mugwort tea or something like that, which will be great for that. But you can also drink a chamomile tea. It will help to relax the body and open the mind. So anytime that you're looking to peek into the beyond, to get information, to connect with your higher self, connect with your spirit guides, you can drink some chamomile tea, and it'll definitely help you to connect in that way and in that fashion. You can also add, there were some references that said that chamomile can be used for love. I'm not sure I'm down with that. maybe it can be used for love, but there is nothing that nothing that is in the chamomile plant itself and in a lot of the more ancient grimoires that I have that say that it can be used for love. So I think that this designation of it being used for love is more recent. And it's also because a lot of times flowers in general are used for love, because what is the purpose of a flower? It's to attract, right? They're going to attract pollinators to come in and pollinate them so that the plant can reproduce. So this may be why it is that people are associating it with love. I personally don't generally use it for love, but you can use it for love if you want to. There's definitely you can use any flower actually for any kind of love magic, for the part of the plant that it is. And that also goes back to the doctrine of signatures. So once again, make sure to sign up for my class if you want to learn more about that. So chamomile is a very versatile plant. I think it's a plant that everybody should have at home. Because not only can you drink the tea of it, you can use it in sachets, you can use the infusion for all kinds of things in your garden, you can use it to help your pets, you can, if you have a skin rash or if you have an something that's itching, you can make a little bit of chamomile tea, you can use a little cloth and you can put it on there, or you can even make a poultice of chamomile and put it on your arm, externally obviously, to help heal the skin and help that rash go away. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with chamomile. So chamomile is definitely an important plant that you definitely want to have on hand. So this is all I have for you for chamomile today, and I'm going to upload this video right at 2 o'clock when our live should have started, so you guys will have that. And once again, I ask that you check out our video for the sale for this week, which is going to focus on chamomile. And not just chamomile, but chamomile and the properties of chamomile. So we're looking at purification, we're looking at sun energy, we're looking at water energy, and we're looking at, we've done a lot of psychic stuff recently, so I'm not going to put anything there for psychic. But purification, protection, which we haven't done recently, all of those things are definitely going to be in the live tomorrow. So I hope you guys stop in and see it. All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you watching. Bye-bye.